Hey there, Minecraft fans, it's Collins. We're gonna do the first of a couple videos on Practical Mechanism, where we're gonna get some mechanism stuff out of the way, and we're gonna figure out we're gonna work our way to 5 times ore processing. But before we do that, we're gonna have to start out with some basics. You know, I've seen a few videos on mechanism ore processing, and they show, some guy jumps in creative mode and picks a bunch of blocks out and shows you 5 times ore processing. But how the heck do you get there? There's a lot of resources involved in that. And the thing is you're probably, if you're doing ore processing in survival, so you can't just pick blocks out of creative mode, and you're going to have to work your way up to that. So we're going to look into the beginnings of mechanism and how mechanism evolves to 5 times ore processing. So we're going to start off with some basic stuff. One of the first things you probably do in survival Minecraft is work your way to ore doubling. And there's a bunch of ways to do ore doubling, so applied energistics grindstone is obviously a good way to do it. If you have Magneticraft, which is actually a fairly new mod, Magneticraft has this crushing table, and this thing is like made out of slabs and some wood, and you make this stone hammer with sticks and cobblestone, and you can double ores with this thing. So it's another basic way to do it. And then once you get started with some machinery, there's some basic stuff like thermal expansion. It's pretty easy to get a pulverizer and a smelter up. And the same thing with like Ender IO. So if you're playing a mechanism pack, it's probably RF heavy pack, and you're gonna have thermal expansion, you're gonna have Ender IO, you're gonna be able to create, a sag mill and an alloy smelter, or a pulverizer and a redstone furnace, and you're gonna have ways to start out. And you can start out in mechanism. So there's a couple things here. There's a crusher, which is kind of like a pulverizer or a sag mill. And then, did I not put the energizer smelter, which is basically just a smelter. So, like, this is ore single. But the crusher doesn't do ore doubling. To do ore doubling, you'd have to build an enrichment chamber. And each ore would give you 2 dusts. So if you want to start off with ore doubling, mechanism is probably not the best way to do it. And kind of the same way with their power gen. So the basic power gen that you can build in mechanism is this heat generator. And you can, stick any fuel in here and it will generate everything. So I stuck an entire stack of coal in this thing earlier, and it put 25.5 KRF. So 25,000. This thing used a little more than half of a thing of coal. It filled up a leadstone energy cell in 3 machines. This thing used up a stack of coal, and we got like 81,000 or 814,000. So that's like 81. So that's like almost 4 times as much power that you can get out of this. So obviously, if you're starting out, if you have other mods, you're going to be using another mod to get yourself up at least to ore doubling. And then you can look into mechanism like ore, triple, quadruple, or 5 times ore processing. Because if we look at these things, like these things don't really, that was a whole stack of charcoal. You can take one of these things and you can pour lava on it. But even that, and you'll get passive heat generation, which isn't too bad. But even with the maximum amount of lava, so we have lava on 5 of 6 sides of this thing. Wow, I didn't even notice the mechanism blocks were flammable. Dang you, stupid blocks. Alright. So even with, as many sides as possible on this heat generator, it's generating almost nothing. So you're probably not going to start out with mechanism. You're probably going to use another mod. So if you have another mod installed, the thing that you want to start out with in mechanism is this metallurgic infuser. So the 2 main things is you take osmium and some redstone, and you get, what is this thing? I can't even remember what it is. We're going to have to look. Osmium and redstone gets you a basic controller, and then iron, and I already threw another piece of redstone in there, is going to get you another piece that you'll need to make most of your machines. But you can't even build the basic machines without building this metallurgic infuser. So enriched alloy, basic control circuit, you're going to have to build a metallurgic infuser just to get like these basic machines going. So you're probably going to be using another mod. You're probably going to start out. The first time you're going to get into mechanism, you're going to be looking at, I want more resources than this ore doubling or double plus, basic ore doubling. So we got to look at a couple of the things and the way mechanism works. And then we'll set up this is ore tripling, because one of the things about the ore quadruple process is it takes a ton of resources. So if you have ore doubling or ore double plus, you want to build this ore tripling system because of a couple of reasons. First of all, you increase your ore output. So while you're building everything for your ore 5 times ore processing, you have this system in place to triple your ore output on your way to 5 times ore output. And the other reason is the ore tripling process in Mechanism is actually used in the 4 times ore processing and in the 5 times ore processing. So we'll take a look at a couple things. First of all is this configurator, which it's not too hard to build. I mean, there's a little bit of gold, this enriched alloy, we saw that. That's just, redstone and some osmium and stuff like that. And this thing needs charge, so you can stick it in like one of these batteries. So here's the energy cube. If you stick it in this plus thing, it'll charge up in here. And if you're just using thermal expansion, you're gonna have to build an energetic infuser to charge. But like Ender IO's battery does the same thing. You can stick 4 things in here and they'll charge up. So you can charge this thing up, and it does act like a wrench. Like I think the default key is M for mode switch, so you would have to hold down shift, or whatever your crouch key is set to, and then cycle through the different modes. So there's a wrench mode, and you can spin just, dang it, it doesn't even work. I thought you were in wrench mode. You're not going to wrench a chest. No, it won't even wrench a chest. So there's a wrench mode, and then there's configuration items for the different things, and I don't even know what these all do. And it will act like a wrench, but most likely you're just going to use a wrench from another mod, because you're just going to want to do wrench stuff. So if I just do, will it even work on there? That'll wrench it off. That's not what I wanted. And this is the mechanism item conduit. But you can use the configurator. So if we put this thing in item mode, yeah, not fluids. Dang it. See, it's not even that great to use. And I shift right click on not the middle of the pipe, but the end of it, I can get it to go. So that's input. The little tiny one is the input. And then this big one is the output or suck. And I believe if I just stick something in there, if it's in suck mode, it'll automatically go into. Yeah. So you don't need an output, you don't need a suck and a push. You can just suck it into your system. And you can color code these things, and you can set up a pretty advanced system with these, the mechanism logistic transporter, which is their item conduits. But a lot of people don't use those. And that's the other thing about all of the other mechanism videos that I've seen. Some guy picks a bunch of blocks out of creative, half the stuff is from another mod, and, this is how you build. I know how to build the thing. You showed me how, but you didn't tell me that it's going to take, 16 stacks of copper to make this stupid thing in the desert. So that's what we're going to look at. We're going to look at all that stuff. So one thing is the electric pump. And when you place this thing down on the ground, it's got, it places it behind you, and you can wrench this thing around too. Most of the mechanism machines, when you wrench them, it only wrenches in one direction, which happens to be facing away from me, which is the same way it would go if I placed it on the ground. So if I place it on the ground this way, the output's on that side. If I place it on the ground this way, the output's on that side. This one, if I wrench it, not with the fake wrench, the real wrench, it ends up just going in the same direction as if I placed it. So they're kind of tricky to wrench. Most of the mechanism machines do that too. But it's just another one of those things. So if you're doing mechanism and you build this configurator, you're probably going to want a wrench from your other mod. And I got a TE wrench, but you can do, Andrea's wrench. Applied Energistic has a wrench. Buildcraft has a wrench. There's wrenches all over the place. What is this? Does this stupid thing even build any power? It's not even noticeable, the amount of power that puts out. So these heat generators, totally not the best way to generate RF from solid fuels. Totally not the way to build all this stuff out, because even to build the smelter, you need to build the metallurgic infuser. So build another thing with another mod, get your ore doubling going, attach a metallurgic infuser so we can build some of these mechanism machines. And then really what you're going to do after this, because we got like coal generation and stuff, right? We're generating, yeah, we're just using solid fuels to generate some power. So we can do it with TE, we can do it with Ender.io, and then we get the mechanism. And once you've got your, metallurgic infuser, did I just say it right? Yeah, metallurgic infuser. Then you can work on, you can build the bounding block. Okay, you can build the wind turbine and the solar panel. And this is the advanced solar generator, but it's really not that hard to make, and neither is the windmill. And these things produce a ton of power. I mean, this thing is 20 max output 320, half of that, so 160. Yeah. And then this thing does pretty much the same thing, 240 out, so it does 120. These put out a lot of RF for how easy they are to make. They're pretty easy to make. You can add these things, and you can just supplement them to your regular system. And the windmill does work better the higher up in the air you go, and the solar panel just needs sunlight and only works in the daytime, but it will send charge out, day or night. You don't have to worry about switching or anything. So even when you build your ore processing, you're still going to need a bunch of other machines. So like, you're going to need the mechanism crusher, even if you have, a pulverizer, a sag mill, whatever. You're still going to need this crusher for some things, because there are certain things that the crusher has to be used for. And the mechanism smelter, it's a redstone furnace, it's electric furnace, whatever. It's exactly the same as all the other ones. It just kind of works a little bit slower. It's almost not even worth building. You can just build one from another mod. But this is the 3 times ore processing. So to go from your ore doubling or your ore double plus in the case of the sag mill, we're going to go to ore tripling. And what you do is you build this purification chamber, and then the output of the purification chamber goes into a crusher, and then from there it goes into an enrichment chamber, and then from there you cook it. So we have the energized smelter, but you can use, a furnace from any mod, because you're going to get dust at this point. So there's 2 ways to use this purification chamber, because what we need to do is we need to get some, you put an ore in here. Right now it's not doing anything because it needs oxygen. And when you first build one of these, this is the first one I built, and I'm showing it to you this way because this is the way the inputs and outputs are configured. By default, the purification chamber takes items in from the top. It will take something that we're going to use to make oxygen, which in this case we can use flint. So the first time you put this thing together, you can stick flint in, and you can feed it in from the bottom, or you can manually feed it in, and then it outputs on the side, and then the crusher inputs from the top, outputs on the side. The enrichment chamber inputs from the top, outputs from the side, and the same thing with the smelter. And then you can get, stuff in here. So we got ore in there. You need 20 flint for each ore processed in order to get enough oxygen generated. And this thing is going to work kind of slow. But once you set this type of setup up, you've got ore tripling. So now when you go 4 times, 5 times ore processing, you've got ore tripling. You're already a step ahead of this stuff, and you're going to need this same system in order to do 4 times and 5 times ore processing, because in both of those steps, the last part of those is stick the result in the purification chamber, and then the crusher, and then the enrichment chamber, and then cook it. So if we look at this, eventually it'll get us. Is it even going? Yeah, this is slower than it's not. There's no upgrades in here, but we're going to get ore tripling. So there's our ore tripling, and that's like the default of it. And even with this type of setup, you're still going to need a bunch of machines anyway. And you can take like an existing system like this, one of these 2 setups, and you can supplement it with, a windmill and some solar panels and stuff like that, and you can fill up a battery and you can connect all these machines up. But then we got to look at going past this, because the instant you build this thing and start going through all your flint, you're going to say, how else can I get oxygen? So here's the next step. This is how you do ore tripling. Well, that's how you do ore tripling. This is how you really do ore tripling. What you're going to need is you're going to need to build one of these electrolytic separators, and you're going to need to feed it water. So we're feeding out water with the mechanism electric pump. Because it's a mechanism tutorial, I'm showing you the mechanism way. The electrolytic separator produces hydrogen and oxygen. We need the oxygen in our purification machine, to purify the ores. The hydrogen, everybody tells you dump it. If you're in survival mode, build some of these gas burning generators. You're going to need these later on anyway to produce power, so just build a bunch of those and stick all of your hydrogen in here. Each of these puts out 120 RF a tick when it's using the hydrogen. So you might as well build a couple of those, 2, 3. This thing uses 240 RF a tick, and there's upgrades like an energy upgrade which says it will increase energy efficiency. It doesn't work in an electrolytic separator. So you might as well build at least 2 of these things to even out the energy cost of your electrolytic separator. But again, you know, solar panel, windmill, battery, cold generation over here, you're going to have more power than you need for this thing. And of course you can use other mods, so like, you know, there's extra utilities. You just put a world upgrade on a transfer node over some things, over water supply, and you got infinite water. You know, different mods, magnetic craft and pressure pipes, which may not be in most people's mod packs, have one block. You just build one block and it produces infinite water. You just, you know, stick a water pipe in it. The magnetic craft one will automatically put water in any adjacent machine. This thing you'll have to pump it out with a water thing. And the Ender IO has a reservoir, which is the same way. And if you want this thing to automatically eject, you just wrench it. And then once there's an arrow on it, any adjacent machine will automatically fill up with water. So there's other ways with other mods to generate water, but this is the mechanism way. So the next step up from these machines, if we look at like the mechanism actual mod, here's a bunch of the machines that we can build, and then they have all these factories. And there's basic ones, and there's advanced ones, and there's elite ones. So by the time we get to 5 times ore processing, we're probably going to switch all these out for elite. But the cool thing is they're used to build one or the other. So you need the basic factory to build the advanced factory, you need the advanced factory to build the elite factory. So while you're starting with your ore tripling, and once you get your ore tripling, something like this set up, you can start to turn these into factories, and these things will do multiple at once. So mechanism machines, this is the step to do it. Purifying, crushing, enriching, and then smelting. So we built these factories. You want to turn this auto sort on, and then this side config, you click on this and you just change this. And I went ahead and set these to eject. So by default it comes from the top, it goes out the side. We just have this ores go in a square. In fact, we can show you what that looks like. Give me one of those and one of those. So the stuff goes in the top. You'll see it just do a loop because I changed all of these side configs. Turn on the auto sort, it will automatically spread everything out over multiple slots, just like this, and it's just going to go around in a circle. When it gets done, it's going to dump all of our ores in. This is ore tripling. We're feeding the oxygen in with this electrolytic separator. And what you want to do with this, if you're using the hydrogen or not, dump excess hydrogen and then feed the rest into a bunch of these machines. Or if you're not going to bother with these machines, just dump excess hydrogen, or dump it all if you're not using it. And then the oxygen, don't set this to dump excess because you only want to produce oxygen when you need it for this ore processing. And that's pretty much it. Now there's a couple other things too with the mechanism machines. We have these upgrades, and there's a bunch of different types. So this gas upgrade says it will increase the efficiency of gas using machinery, and this thing is using gas, and it says it will support gas upgrades, but it doesn't actually make it any more efficient. So once you figure out ore processing, again, purify, crush, enrich, and then smelt, you want to change the regular machines you built into these at least basic factories, because you're doing ore tripling now. You're going to have a little bit of ores more than you did before. Go ahead and just set these up to the basic machines, and then you want to build the upgrades. But this is what you're going to want to do for the upgrades. The energy upgrade increases energy efficiency. So right now this thing says it's using 28 RF a tick. If I stick 8 of these in here, it'll go down to like 2.8 RF a tick. So you want to build these energy upgrades as soon as possible, and then the speed upgrade will speed things up. But you got to be careful with that, because each speed upgrade increases the energy usage out of the machine, and you'll go beyond what the energy efficiency does. So if I just stick 8 speed upgrades in this thing, it'll use so much power it'll suck up my whole base. So what you want to do is you want to put the energy upgrades in all of these machines. And by the way, the electrolytic separator takes speed and energy upgrades, but because the electrolytic separator can be used to generate power, they have this energy upgrades don't actually make it more efficient, so it's not even worth putting any upgrades in this thing. Maybe one speed upgrade if you find yourself running low on oxygen. But it uses 240 RF thick, and it'll double that if you put one speed upgrade in there. So you want to be careful with the speed upgrades in there. So get all of your energy upgrades in, so 8 in each of these machines. And you're going to use a little bit of gold to make those things, because they're made, I think they're each made with 3 gold. Where'd you go? 1 gold dust. So 1 gold dust, these are iron and redstone, which you'll probably have a lot of. And 8 of those for each. And then when you're processing ore, figure out which machine is running slowest, and then stick 1 speed upgrade in there. And then if the next one's a bottleneck, stick a speed upgrade in there until you're satisfied with how fast it's going relative to how much power it's using. You're probably going to base that off of, how much power you're producing in your base. So this is ore tripling. Again, it's 4 machines: purify, crush, enrich, and then smelt. And you don't have to use Mekanism smelter. You can use any mod's smelter, but with the smelting factory, it does 3 at once, which is going to match everything else in our factory machines. So this is probably the best way to do this, is to go ahead and just build the factories. And this ore tripling process, when we do 4 times ore processing and 5 times ore processing, we're going to use these machines. Because again, the last stages of 4 and 5 times ore processing is stick the results you get from those steps into these machines. So think about that when you're building this, because you want to build the ore tripling so you have enough resources to build the 4 times ore and the 5 times ore processing. And you want to build this system with a thought in mind that you're going to be sticking a bunch more machines over here, because the 4 times process and the 5 times process are going to process a bunch of stuff and then dump it into these machines. So that's the way that we start off with Mekanism. This is a practical usage of Mekanism, because I can pick a bunch of blocks out in creative mode and show you how to build all of this stuff, but really you got to know how to start out. So before you get to 5 times ore processing and waste all of your ore doubling, waste all your ores doubling them in one of these things, at least get up to ore tripling, triple your ore output, use that to build the 4 times system, use the 4 times system to get enough resources to build the 5 times system. And we'll cover those in a couple videos. The next episode of Practical Mekanism. So thanks everybody for watching. Thanks everybody who likes and subscribes, and we'll catch you guys later.